There we go. Good morning. So for any of you who are new to the Monday Mantra Call, my name is Carla Smith. I'm a personal transformation coach, and I started this call really as this opportunity for us to come together as community to practice the daily small steps that we can take to really enhance our life, to have the life that we want and deserve, to really focus on self-love. And so we come together every Monday and just kind of talk through topics and get new ideas about how we can put things in place every day that will help us to love ourselves deeply. So let's get started. Today's topic is, with each small step, I know I am creating the life I want and deserve. With each small step, I know I'm creating the life I want and deserve. So we're going to talk today a little bit about momentum, because I think it's just this powerful way for us to look at change, right? Momentum is that energy of moving forward in our lives instead of feeling stuck or even feeling like we're going backwards, right? And when we decide to make big changes in our life and take big action, we need momentum to propel us forward. And so this small step idea where we break things, these big changes up into small pieces, is how momentum is built, right? The biggest thing that we do, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is take on too much, right? And so when we take on too much, we end up feeling like it's too hard, right? And so this idea of 1%, one little increment, one little small step is what we're going to talk a lot about today. So when we have momentum, it leads to optimism, it leads to hope, it leads to consistency, and then that leads to more inspired action. So this is really the power of these looking at things in this little tiny growth, right? It's going to make a big difference. So here's our question for today, and we always start in the place where maybe there's some challenge, right? So that we can feel connected to what that feels like so we can get out of it. So when you start a new skill or practice, what are some of the things that get in your way to consistently doing it? What are some of the things that get in your way? So you can use the reaction button at the bottom there to raise your hand, or you can use the chat to put questions in if you want to. Old habits, exactly, so true. So when we have old things in place, it's really hard to put in new things, right? I love that answer. Anyone else? What are some of the things that get in your way? Anna, go ahead.
Morning for everybody.
Good morning.
I think that in my case is the inner critic saying, you're not going to change anyway. So what are you going to change or start something new?
I love that. And it's so good to get right into what our inner critic is saying. And each of us, maybe it's a little bit different than that, but that specific one is so common that this isn't going to work out. So why bother starting, right? It's such a big way that our inner critic interferes with making us grow, because it wants us to stay small, right? Our inner critic is trying to keep us safe. Love that. Thanks, Anna. Overwhelm and says resistance and wanting to choose the path of least resistance. Love that, right? Exactly. That we resist changing, and so we choose the easier path, right? And that's why these small steps are going to help us. Negative beliefs, great, Charles. Lene says, what others might think of us. Exactly. So we use other people's opinions of us. If you've been on this call a lot, and I'll say it again throughout the call, other people's opinions of us are none of our business. But we definitely get into our heads about that. Afraid of incompletion. That's a great one, Anna. Yeah. And just yourself. I love that answer. It's so honest, and it is actually what gets in our way, us, right? We get in our own way for sure. Taking on too much at once. When it gets difficult, there's disappointment. Yes, that's a great one. Thanks for saying that. Because we want it to work. Well, of course, we have this optimism to start with, but then slowly it's not changing fast enough for us. And so it feels disappointing, right? And these are all the things that come up that we are resistant, that create resistance, procrastination, self-sabotage, all of these things. Okay, so I'm going to share 9 practices or ideas and tools that you can put in place to develop more momentum in your life. So the first one is, don't be afraid to dream big. Oh, I love this one so much. Because what happens often when things have not turned out maybe in the past is then we start to make our dreams really small, right? So instead of thinking, pushing ourselves to really believe that we can have this life that we want or deserve, we just decide to do some little thing. And it's not really inspiring, right? That doesn't really inspire us. We keep ourselves small and safe to protect ourselves from things like perceived failure, embarrassment, and definitely fear, right? So believing that you can have big, wild, over-the-top dreams come true is the first step to having the life that you want and deserve. When you believe it, it's possible, right? So I want you to, after the call or sometime today or whenever you feel inspired, write it down in maybe a big dream journal, have a little notebook that could be what it is that you want the most, so that you're giving your ideas a life, right? And when we give our ideas life, they have this sense of possibility. When we don't give them life, they just lay flat. So it's like putting the instructions into the address into your GPS, right? If you don't put in anything, you're not going anywhere, right? So make sure you're putting the address in. Number 2, I want you to make a commitment to yourself. This is so, so important because our thoughts become things. What we think matters so much, right? And when we're conscious about what we think, and we commit to an idea for ourselves, we start to see the world through that lens, right? The more and more we are committed to something, the easier it is for our brains to follow that track. I once heard that we take in 5% of what we see, right? So we actually are conscious of 5% of what we see. And the rest of it just kind of goes in, right? So imagine if you have this idea that you can start a business, or you can have the partner of your dreams, or you can be the fittest you've ever been in your life, and you commit to that, and then that's the 5%, right? And if you don't have that conscious sort of idea in your mind, then it's all sorts of other things that can come in that are not that focused, right? Deciding that you are capable of making changes that you want is a key step to creating the momentum you need to make your vision a reality. Yeah, so just really wanting to say to yourself, I am dedicated to this thing, right? Whatever it is. Number 3, make the time to practice. So we talk about this all the time, right? Making time has to be non-negotiable for you, right? Once you're ready to begin a new practice, a new habit, a new action, a new anything, you have to create a specific time for that, right? You have to say, so if you decide, I really want to have a life where inner harmony and peace is part of my life. And so I'm going to practice meditation. And I'm going to, we'll talk about how to put meditation in place, but I'm going to practice meditation every day. If you don't choose a time for meditation, it's going to go away quickly. You might be really motivated on day 1 and 2, right? Because you're like, yes, meditation. And then something's going to come up and be in your way. You're going to get up late and you're going to let it go away. So if you pick a time, so I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes at 7:45 and you put an alarm on and you make that your meditation time, there's a much better chance that at 7:45 you're going to meditate than if you don't have a time on, right? This is all practice. It will not come naturally to you, right? So it is your responsibility to understand it's going to feel unusual, uncomfortable, and challenging to put it in place. And your inner critic is gonna like fight you every minute to say, don't do that. That's stupid. That's a waste of your time. That's not gonna make any difference. You don't ever make things stick. So just stop, right? There's going to be a million reasons running through your head why this is not going to work out for you, right? And so having a dedicated time to do it helps you do it anyway, even with all of the critique that's going on in your head, right? So make sure that if you're starting something, that you have it written down somewhere that this time you do it, or this is how it's going to look. So it's got some structure to it, right? Structure is going to help you feel connected to it being part of your daily life. Number 4, understand your fears. So the only reason we don't change is because we're afraid. Right? We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of success. What the heck will this mean if we actually do this? Right? We're afraid that other people will judge us. We're afraid we're not good enough. We're afraid we're not going to be able to go through with it. We're afraid of all of these things. When you decide to do something new for yourself, you will face all sorts of inner dialogue about why this is wrong for you. Right? Our nega is fear in its most critical form, right? All of the ruminating thoughts, that fear. And it's trying to keep us safe, right? From the dangers of making big mistakes or being a fool or failing miserably, whatever is in your inner critic mind. Our inner critic is there to protect us. It's one of the important things that I teach my clients, and I hope here I've said it enough times. Our inner critic is actually a safeguard. It is, kind of an odd way of doing it. It's there to protect us, to keep us small, to make sure that we can be in certainty, to make sure that we can predict what's coming next. It's what it's trying to do all the time, right? It's not very good at it because it does it in such a mean girl way, but it's like there anyway to do that, right? When we notice these fears and uncover the long-standing patterns for why they are present, so that's key. Yes, you can know that this is what you're saying, but you also have to understand where they began so that you can unpack them, turn the volume down on them, and then slowly begin to replace them with more affirming, positive, and empowering thoughts and beliefs, right? So this piece is crucial. It's why I say a diet doesn't work, because you're not unpacking why you're emotionally eating. When you unpack why you're emotionally eating, then you're like, oh, I'm choosing this thing because I'm nervous right now because I have this thing to do. And so instead I'm going to do a hand massage and not eat the croissant, right? And then I'll eat the croissant when I consciously decide that I want a croissant, instead of just doing it unconsciously to try and push down nervousness, right? And so then I can say, I'm nervous in this moment, and I'm going to give myself some self-care, or I'm going to ask for some help from somebody, or I'm going to, use essential oils, or whatever it is that's going to help this. That's not emotional eating, right? So when we can understand the fear, it allows us then to intercept it and then replace it with affirming, positive, and empowering thoughts and beliefs. Number 5, create a ring of support. Even being on this call is a beginning of that, right? There's people accountability buddies, or you can, get help, because everyone here is here for the same purpose, right? So having a handful of good people in your corner will help you maintain your optimism and be resilient when things feel more difficult, right? A team of supportive, compassionate people who you trust can also offer you crucial feedback that doesn't feel critical or painful, because you trust them, right? And they will gently push you when you face obstacles or you feel like you're ready to sabotage. They'll be that person who says, it's okay, I know you can do this. And if you can't, I'm here, right? And we'll get through this together. And I believe in you. And let's just go for it, right? What's the worst that can happen? Right. And so they're the kind of person who's that. I want you to always make sure that this ring of support are people that you can trust, who are not, obviously people who are toxic to you, right? So really choose wisely who you share this with. It might not be your partner, for example, who's the best person for this. They might be nice and supportive on some level, but you might have to go outside of like who's just right beside you and find someone who's gonna be honest and kind and gentle and like your champion, right? And that doesn't just mean they're always going yay, yay, yay. They're also telling you, oh, I think, you're letting this go a few too many days. So let's get back up on the horse and start doing this again. Having people to talk to about what is creating resistance helps us to get out of our heads and back in action, right? So this is one of the things that I do with Penny so often, she's gonna laugh, is I will have resistance to something new in my business, and it will impact the work that I have to put out. And when I am able to say it out loud to her, it stops it from being the constant, tape in my head. She will give me like some words of encouragement, help me figure out a way that is easier than what I've been thinking about, or, kick me in my pants every once in a while. And then I'm just gonna go, right, this is not the hardest thing. This is not the worst, because that's where our fear comes in, right? So it's such a helpful thing to have a team of people, and it can be 1 or 2 people. It doesn't have to be like 100 people. It shouldn't be 100 people, right? Just a small group of people. Number 6, replace energy draining things with recharging practice. A life that feels energy draining. We're people pleasing. We're in a life that's filled with perfection. We feel always exhausted and overwhelmed by things. We're always in the negative, right? Those are energy draining. And when we're in energy draining way of operating, there's no way for us to do something new. There's no way to build momentum. There's no way to actually feel as though it's possible, right? Because everything feels like it's pulling you down, right? We all know that feeling. Put your hand up if you've have a lot of energy draining things, or know the feeling of what energy draining is, right? You can use, right? Like we know what that feels like. Yeah. And so we want to notice that we're in energy draining mode, let's call it that, right? And shift that into recharging practices, restorative practices, things that make us feel energized, right? So what does that look like? That's all the self-care that we've ever talked about. Maybe you're going for a walk, maybe you're resting, maybe you're doing vigorous exercise because it gets you pumped. Maybe it's just being like working on compassion for yourself, right? So that you can do the exercise, maybe because that might be the thing that you're working on. Maybe it's just looking at how you're talking to yourself, writing that out and crossing it all out. So whatever that negative thought that's in your head, write it down and then take a minute, read it, and then cross it out and say, this is enough now. I'm not talking to myself like this anymore. Those are all different kinds of recharging practices, right? You want to nourish yourself instead of depleting yourself. Number 7. And really, this goes right into the mantra. We want to break it down again and again and again and again and again, right? Keep breaking it down. Big changes work when we break them down into baby steps. This is one of the hardest things for so many people. The most successful people have learned to be really, really comfortable in the 1% change versus all or nothing, right? We understand that this takes time. There's patience, there's kindness, there's an ability to see that this little tiny thing is not the same as nothing. That is key, right? So if you meditate 1 minute for 1 month, even if it takes you 1 month to count up to 10 and back down to, up to 10 and down to 1 and up to 10. And for a month, that's all that you can do without your mind like completely wandering. That's so much better than not doing anything. It's like almost everything, right? Because it's not nothing. So this little tiny baby step progress is so powerful when you buy into it. My biggest advice is if you've taken on a new practice, say meditation, and you're not consistent in it, that means you need to make it easier. You're not doing anything wrong. You just need to make it easier because you're trying something new. That's what the word practice means, right? So it's like saying a kid who wants to play baseball, the first thing he has to do is get into the major leagues. That would be ridiculous, right? That kid needs to throw a ball back and forth, or maybe just toss it up in the air and feel what it feels like to land in his glove, or maybe just get used to wearing a glove. Keep breaking it down until it is so easy you have success. That's 1%, right? And if you can make it so small that you have success, you're going to do the next thing because you're going to be excited instead of feeling energy drained and disappointed in yourself and feel like you're a failure. Instead, you're going to be like, oh, I can meditate for a minute. That's awesome. I'm going to try 2 minutes because that's what momentum feels like. Momentum is like, oh, I've been doing this, so I can do the next thing, right? And so then you try 2 minutes. And when 2 minutes feels fully successful all the time, then you go to 3 minutes, right? And 5, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that's really important is to notice when things feel hard. If you're deciding to, eat differently, and so you're looking at your macro numbers, right? And you decide, oh, I need to cut carbs because I've been eating a lot of carbs and it doesn't feel healthy in my body. Cutting out all carbs is not going to be easy. Deciding to have one less slice of bread that's going to be easier, right? And then you go from there. And then it will feel healthy. It will feel like lifestyle. It will feel like it's possible. So break it down into even smaller steps. Instead of thinking I'm failing, just say, this is too much. I got to break it down and then figure that out. And the last thing that, oh no, the second last thing, visualize your success. I love this. When you can see your vision of success, it is much more possible for you to believe that you're going to get there. Conversely, if you cannot see your success, it is unlikely that you will get there. University students, so parents of kids who are in high school, the more they've talked about university, so I think it's something like 90% of students whose parents helped them visualize going to university when they were younger, had that expectation and that started to believe in that, go. And conversely, 90% of kids who don't ever talk about university and it's not part of their visualization, don't choose it, right? And not that it matters whether you go to university or not. It's just about this idea that when you can see yourself doing something, it happens, right? Much more often. So if you believe that you're going to be fit and that you're going to feel strong and that you are going to always, be in a lifestyle where nourishment is big to you and you can feel all that, you're going to stick to things that help you feel that much easier. Spend time each day imagining what it feels like, what it looks like, who is with you, and what you have when you are fully in the life that you are dreaming of. Right? So I spend just about 3 or 4 minutes each morning when I first wake up. So I have a big vision for my life that includes all the different areas of my life, right? So what my relationship will look like, what it looks like when I'm traveling, what it looks like when my kids are, grown, they are grown, but have like grandchildren and lives outside of our life, how my business is growing, the team I'm growing, like all of these things that are part of my life, what my physical fitness will be, everything. So I have this really big vision because I dream big. And then every day for about 3 or 4 minutes, just as I wake up, I think about a small part of that. So I might just think about what it will be like to live in Spain for 1 month in a couple of years, right? What will our apartment look like? What are all the smells that I'm having? Will Rob and I be walking on the beach, down La Rambla in Barcelona? I dream of being in it and see myself like in the dream, right? In the imagination. And then the day I would do something else. Maybe I'll be at my book launch and, signing copies of my book. And then the next day it might be that I'm hosting a team retreat and I can see all of us there and we have beautiful food and we're talking about what's next. And so that's how I do this dreaming piece, right? This visualization. And then the second thing that I do is I create a vision board every year with pictures and words that depict the vision of success, right? So I want you to think about what that would feel like to have up in your space if you don't already. How many people have a vision board? Put your hand up if you already have one. No? Somebody? Anyone? Nice. Awesome. A couple of people. Amazing. So on my website is a resource that you can download, which has like how to create a vision board and what sort of things you can include on it and how to use it. Because the most important and powerful part of a vision board, so they're fun, right? If you like, it's like cut and paste when you were a kid. There you go through some magazines, find things that just inspire you, find words that light you on fire, that are like what you want to create, right? glue those all on a board. I use like a 9 by 12 canvas that I get, that's not too expensive, and glue those all on. But then I hang it in my office so that every single time I walk back and forth in and out of my office, this vision that I'm creating for myself is imprinting in my brain. That is my lens. That is how I perceive all sorts of things through those words, the pictures, the way they all come together. It's in my head, right? And I can even remember ones from the past. But what's incredible is as you have that vision, you're creating this pathway to each of those things because you've invited them in. And so then you'll start to be able to say, oh, look, that's starting to, I see proof of that coming alive. I see, all the different pieces coming. And so it's a really great way. We're very visual, generally speaking. And so it really helps us to create the pathway to our success, right? And it's like validation to this incredible life that you're building, right? Seeing it on this board. And the last thing we're going to talk about before we open up for discussion is celebrate and acknowledge your success. Take time to see what you're doing is working, right? To see how you're growing, to see that your personal development is on pace, your pace, not anyone else's, right? See that you are creating something in these baby steps, right? Each day, maybe you write down the things you are most proud of, the actions you're taking, and these incremental steps that you're beginning to notice. One of the things that I love about putting in a new practice, so it might be something like, I want to start going to bed at midnight instead of 2 a.m., right? Because I'm just going to start getting into a better bed routine. And my habit is to stay up really, really late. And I'm really not doing a great job of getting myself to bed. And so I'm going to get to bed at midnight, say. And midnight will feel like enough hours because I get up at 8, say, or whatever time you get up. And so first off, baby steps. So instead of going from 2 a.m. to midnight, let's say we're going to go from 2 a.m. to 1:45, right? That's where we're going to start. And so that 15 minutes, right, is going to start to have some direct effects. You're going to feel 15 minutes less tired, right? Basically, it's going to have some indirect effects too. It might be that you're not watching the same kind of shows, because if you go to watch shows because you can't see the end of the show, so you decide not to watch that show anymore, right? So maybe you read instead. You might have an indirect result because of something that you change. When you start, when you start getting yourself to bed a little bit earlier every month, you get to the next 15 minutes, however it works for you, whatever your pace is, you're going to start having more of those indirect results. You're going to feel less tired for sure when you get to midnight, but you're also going to maybe have more energy. So you start doing a little bit more exercise in the morning, or before bed, you decide I'm going to journal because that gets me sleepy. And so it helps me to get to bed. Or you start, flossing because you want to do a better bedtime routine. So you're going to have all these things that come in, write them down. The more and more you notice that's working instead of what's not working, right? The more likely you're going to do it and keep doing it. What you focus on expands. The more you see yourself as succeeding, the more success you will achieve, right? Everything is about what you're feeding yourself, like literally feeding yourself. What thoughts are you feeding yourself? What beliefs are you feeding yourself? What actions are you doing for yourself? All of that Negatively and positively are equal. So if you spend all your time in the negative, all those things are going to feel negative. If you spend all your time in the positive, all the negative. And then because we're in practice, there's going to be this little mix of these. And we just want to be moving towards the positive side so that there's less and less negative things and thoughts and beliefs and more positive ones, right? The negative ones are going to squeak in, but you're going to have all of this positive stuff to say, I'm going to be nicer to myself than that, right? Be your best cheerleader. You know, I say often self-love leads to all the love. You got to love yourself the most first. You have to be the person who loves you, who believes in you, who cheerleads you, who is your champion, right? Other people's lives and other people's opinions of you are none of your business. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Maybe you compare yourself to how you were before. Do you know? Like, I love that idea that ago, how I am now, I dreamed of being 10 years ago, right? See how you are taking these little steps to grow each and every day. Because you are the person who most knows, right? You have the ability to really show up for yourself and to share that knowledge with yourself. And every time you write down, I did a great thing, or say it out loud, or tell a friend, you're training yourself to believe that you can do more and more. All right, so we have some time for questions or comments or talking about what your vision is, to get you started on things. If you want to talk about, like, this is the thing that's holding me back, or this is the thing that I'm stuck in, or here's my big dream, anything you want. Is there anyone who wants to start? I know it's big. Just opening the chat.
I'm just going to share one comment, or a question that someone had. I know that some say to be specific with your vision, but is there such a thing as being too specific?
Oh, great. So I think when we have a real specific vision, that's really a goal, right? So you might have a goal in place. I love the idea of having expansive, big, bold vision for your life. So it's around what you feel, how you will kind of show up in the world, what are the kind of this big sweeping ideas that you want to have come to life for you, right? That's for me what vision means. And then goals are specific outcomes, right? One of the things that I think is really important, and why I choose practices over goal setting as my sort of language, is because I feel as though goals are very much about the end result and practices are about the process, right? And so if we have really specific ideas, we're getting really narrow. And I think when we practice something, that's that idea of like a direct result, I will sleep better, and indirect results, I might start reading, there's room for expansion and growth when you aren't only trying to get to bed at midnight. Do you know what I mean? If that's the only thing that you're focused on, that's all you're going to see. When you allow for some room for other things to come in, that's when it has that ripple effect. And you start to notice other areas of your life also expanding because of that one thing. It's a really good question. And it's maybe, that's my philosophy. Other people think different things. Definitely SMART goals work for people. I don't use them at all because I love this idea that as I practice being, disciplined about writing, say, then other things are going to come. I will finish my book. I will, help my team to have deadlines met. I will, like, all sorts of things. So I like to work on it being more broad than specific, but it's personal. a little bit too, because there are definitely philosophies around it being very specific, right? So it just depends on if that feels really good. I think to all of this stuff that we talk about is, you know, these are things that worked for me and other things work for other. And definitely I have like used them with lots and lots and lots and lots of clients. So I know they work, right? But it's also those people who are attracted to me that might be part of why it works for them, right? So if being specific helps you, then go for it. Yeah, no judgment about how you get there. That's a great question. Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Lene, go ahead.
Good morning. I was just wondering, what can you provide in terms of suggestions to help with the feeling of deserving?
Oh, good question.
Because that's something that, you know, sometimes I feel like I deserve it, other times I don't. What are some of your ideas or practices or suggestions for, you know, just trying to change that idea or way of thinking?
Yeah,
Thank
so you're welcome. Such a good question. And it's such a big part of that inner critic conflict that we face, is this idea that we are undeserving or deserving from this conditional place, right? And this is really what self-love is all about, this idea that we are unconditionally worthy, deserving of everything that we choose to pursue in our lives. It doesn't mean that it's all going to happen necessarily, right? But it does mean, but we can believe that we are deserving of things from this loving, compassionate place. And so this not deserving or deserving based on conditions, right? Like I deserve this because, or I am not deserving of this because, is grooming from a long time ago, right? It's a pattern that is stuck because of maybe that is how you were treated or you saw it with other people when you were young and you ingested it. It became part of the way that you operate. And so we have to really unpack that. You know, big part of this work is not to fluff over that part. So it's such a good question. It's where all the fear lies, right? In the deserving. And when we feel undeserving of things, that's shame, right? So I think what's so important is that when shame is present, it is this beautiful opportunity to look at ourselves and say, why am I still carrying this? Why is this still part of who I feel I need to be? How is this serving me right now? Feeling sorry for myself, or feeling like a victim, or feeling like good things don't happen to me, or whatever it is that's coming forward, right? And then really starting to shift, reframe all of that language, right? All of that thought process, all of those beliefs. It takes time for sure, do you know? And you may need to get this with you. But it's very important to believe that it is possible to deserve everything, right? Everything that you want. Does that make sense? I hope that was helpful. Okay, excellent. Go ahead, and go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to add that what I've found is that when I start treating myself better and doing things for myself that maybe I haven't done before, that so increases my sense of deserving. Then I feel like I deserve to have this and more.
Right.
And it was just kind of a unexpected experience.
So perfect. Yeah. So that's that momentum piece, right? So momentum isn't just about the practice getting more and more consistent. It's also about your belief system getting more and more consistent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important for us to see that as we believe that the life that we want and deserve, which just means that we love ourselves deeply because we believe that we should have this life, the more and more that happens, the more momentum happens around those beliefs and thoughts, right? And so the more that we believe that we deserve our love and the love of others, the easier it is to believe that we deserve the love of ourselves and others. And so that momentum just keeps building. And like you said, your thought patterns start to kind of just shift, right? And that's why I love the idea of big vision versus really specific things, because these indirect effects are what are actually the magic, right? Because you're not expecting them. It's not what you're working on. And suddenly it's like, whoa. So it's just about continuing to practice.